Eris, you find yourself in the city of Zenith. The sky is bone white, and it has been since the Angel of the Presence was killed in the town square 40 days ago. Since then, a feeling of paranoia and unease has descended on the city as people don't really know what this religious omen means anymore. They're unsure what is happening, and all the while, the Red Presence movement has continually been gaining steam, continually been gaining followers. Uh, if you keep track of the news, you would see that a foreign dignitary, essentially, a man named Khalil Khan, was assassinated as well during this time period. And a few well-placed questions among the divers, and maybe just even idle gossip that you catch here and there among the secret corners of the city, you're able to determine that your friends have been busy of late, though it's been a while since you've been able to catch up with them. Presently, you find yourself walking towards this enormous blue-green crystalline structure in the center of the city. This thing is alien and bizarre, but at the same time, it's familiar. This is the Magisterial Tower. This is the center of power for the city. Uh, you have a mission. You know they're planning something. You need to find out what. And if you think it's bad enough, you need to stop it. Otherwise, you get to just report back to the king. What are your feelings like? How are you processing this kind of apocalyptic white sky and the vibrant red moon, for lack of a better word, that has begun rising from the west, that people are looking to, praying to, praising as the red presence itself?
I think with this whole sudden apocalyptic change of scenery, Eris feels like she should be shocked.
Mhm.
She really feels like she should be, but given given the state of her visions that she's been having, and I did want to ask a question: has she been having any visions since her separation from the rest of the gang?
I would say it's possible, but no more than usual. Everyone who lives in the city gets visions from time to time. And if you've had any visions since then, they've been relatively normal and mundane. You might get a brief flash from the perspective of a father taking care of his child, or, a random miscreant spray painting something that's long since been obliterated. The normal shit.
Right. Yeah, nothing too crazy, at
Nothing
least.
ghastly, no.
Okay. Yeah, then yeah, in that case, yeah, she feels like she should be surprised,
Mhm.
but she knows well enough about the city that there are just some things you just stop being surprised by a lot of things, especially
Absolutely.
when it comes to religion and
Mhm.
all that other godly shit that she frankly couldn't really give a shit about.
Absolutely. Then, as you make your approach to the tower, probably the only interesting thing, or the only thing of note that happens, is you're walking, and this little old lady, she's a solid, like, maybe 4'11" or something along those lines. She's wearing these white robes of the church, of the Manifold Church, and she just accidentally kind of bumps into you on her way through the city. Uh, she gives you a look. It's meaningful, knowing almost, unsettling, as if she can see through whatever skin you're wearing right now. But she simply smiles, extends a hand to you. Goodness go with you, child. This is the standard greeting phrase among the Manifold Church.
She'll parrot it back, mainly just
Absolutely.
to deflect any suspicion,
Sure.
but she's definitely gonna be a little bit wary of that stare because not many people tend to actually give her any sort of looks like that, especially when she's on a job. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, she goes on her way.
Oh, I can't say I quite like kind of sign that's gonna give, but oh well, off we go. She'll continue to make her way to the tower, trying to put that incident out of her mind for now and try to focus
Absolutely.
back. All right. Okay, let's see. How do we get in here? She'll probably take a look about how to how to get inside, B, how
Absolutely.
she's going to blend in,
Mm-hmm.
and see how to figure out what's exactly is going on. That's going to be essentially her 3-step plan.
Gotcha. Figure out how to get in, figure out how to blend in, and then what was the third one?
Basically, find information as to
Find
what they're trying to
information.
do.
Of course. You've known about this job for a while, at least a few days. Have you spent any time preparing an identity, preparing an alibi?
She most likely would have spent time preparing an identity, at least,
Absolutely.
gathering clothes, crafting some sort of background, however decent it may be. It's a bit of a rush job, so it might not hold up well.
Sure. Yeah. It's not difficult at all to get your hands on the robes that are fashionable among the magisterium. And so you're able to, at the very least, concoct a convincing disguise. What's your identity? Who are you going in as?
She'll be going in as a sort of novitiate, essentially, like a sort
Hmm.
of either. I want to say novitiate, someone who's fairly new to
Gotcha.
the church, but still experienced enough in that they can move, maybe not move through most places. Obviously, higher restricted places might get her in a little bit of
Mhm.
trouble here and there, but she could still move throughout most places inside at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will say that that works for you more or less. You're able to certainly approach the tower through this massive open space among the buildings and head to the front gate, really the only primary entrance of this place. You progress, there are a couple of members of the Magisterial Guard in their traditional kind of sky blue and bronze outfits. They sort of cross glaives as you approach the front door, waiting for your identification.
She'll produce it and sort of sort of try to act as if she's being like a little, shaky around the guard, considering, hey, don't fuck with the guard.
Mhm.
So she'll like sort of present her identification to the guards, and I'm not really offer any words, just kind of looking down, just don't fuck with them, don't fuck with them, giving off that energy.
Sure. Go ahead and roll me d20. Do you think any skills you have might apply to forgery or faking an identity?
I would say probably.
Maybe deception?
I would say deception,
Make me
probably.
a deception check. This will be like a DC 12.
Yeah. Move my dice around. So, there we go. What? And that's a 12.
Perfect then. You hand these papers to the guard. He does something. He waves a hand over it, casts a minor spell. You're not fully sure what it is, but he hands the paper back to you. Initiate Anya. Welcome.
Thank you. She'll kind of take her back and put her identification back and just sort of meekly make her way through.
Absolutely. You make your way into the ground floor of the tower. This is a sort of wide open receptacle type space. Um, there are mostly just this is mostly a sort of liminal space. People pass through this area of the tower. They don't really congregate here for much, at least not typically. And so, yeah, you're in, and you are convincing enough to the guards, at least. Uh, Once you get inside, something that strikes you just kind of offhand is out in the city, when you catch someone in their robes, they look fancy, they look exotic almost in a way. It's novel. But in here, it's almost more of a uniform. It's restricting and imposed upon you. It's odd.
That isn't really lost on her, and is almost like she's almost shuddering in like an almost inherent like loathing for that sort of constraining, imprisoning feeling. Like there's nothing more that Eris loves than just being able to be free.
Mhm.
But this sort of feeling of being trapped in like this uniformity, it's not a good feeling for her. It's really suffocating, and it's just she tries to put it out of her mind, but it's still kind of scratching the back of her head, just like, ugh, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's the investigation like?
So first, she'll try to first see if she can hear any gossip from anyone sort of passing through.
Absolutely.
Try to keep yourself as nondescript, but still sort of keep an ear open for anything that might be interesting.
Sure, you can go ahead and roll investigation, perception, or insight. Each one will give you a different piece of information.
Alrighty. Let's go with perception.
Perception? Sure. This would be like a DC 10.
DC 10. Okay, cool. That is 7 plus 7, 14.
14, that'll do it for sure. You don't necessarily catch any interesting gossip, but you do catch a couple of more decorated figures progressing through the space, and specifically, a lot of them are headed straight up with almost little entourages. Some of them seem like bodyguards, others seem like members of staff almost. But broadly, what you're able to glean from this is that the higher ups are headed higher up. Uh,
Hmm.
and they're not necessarily difficult to spot.
Interesting. I think Eris wants to see if she can try and find a way to get up there. Obviously, her current identity might be a little bit limited, but she might see if she can find a way to blend in with some of the entourages in some way, shape, or
For
form.
sure.
Either, yeah.
Let's call this then your first foray into the magisterial tower itself then. This is a grand structure, crystalline inside as well as out. There are these enormous tapestries on the wall as you begin ascending the stairs, depicting all sorts of various historical moments. There are, again, these large woven tapestries, some of which are ancient, dedicated to the great sorcerers of old, the first type of magic that was ever really practiced with some power and some world-shaking effects. Uh, Once you reach the second floor, you see an enormous panorama around you. Again, a woven tapestry kind of hung against the crystalline walls. And this depicts with artistic liberty, the development of wizarding from a sort of backwater esotery practiced by unusual, eccentric nobles and hedge mages in the far outlands to the dominating force in today's society. And this tapestry is quite beautiful. This is among the finest art, certainly of its size, you've ever seen.
She can. It's funny because as she's sort of observing it, also sort of taking in the artistic beauty of it, she's also just kind of doing a quick mental calculation of how much this thing could sell on the black market. But given its size, may not be the best idea to take it right now. If also for the fact that she
Absolutely.
isn't on a job.
For sure. It's difficult to appraise it off the bat, but you could tell that something like this, if it was made by hand, which maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but if it was made by hand, this is thousands of labor hours uh, from skilled artisans, likely being valued at thousands of gold.
Mm-hmm. She's sort of gonna make a mental note to like one day, one day.
One day. Yeah, and you were able to essentially continue progressing up the tower, and interestingly enough, no one seems to stop you. Uh, there's a lot of activity in here. It seems like all of the mages are kind of cloistered up in here, while the sky is this again ominous shade of unchanging white that reveals neither day nor night. But yeah, you're able to continue up, and quickly you realize that it's likely no one's going to stop you.
Hmm. She is a little surprised by that, considering the higher up the higher up, especially where the higher ups go, there tend to be more security.
Mhm.
So it is a little odd that no one is trying to stop her, but it does make her job a little bit easier at least. So she'll be thankful for that for now. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
The further up you go, the more you realize that the people around you are all heading up. On the first floor, the second floor, third floor, you know, second floor, this enormous library space where you have people studying and reading. Third floor is broken up. Shit, sorry. Third floor is broken up to these sort of practice chambers where people are practicing all kinds of spells. Uh, and once you get above these kind of functional floors where people are still actively engaged in the purpose of the structure, you find everyone is heading up.
well, now this is about to get interesting. She'll try to keep trying to blend in, but she'll make
Mhm.
note of the fact that, hey, this is about to be something either extremely big, extremely dangerous, likely both, and she definitely might have need to ask for more payment on this.
For sure. Yeah, the 500 gold you were promised on completion of this job, while a significant sum, is beginning to feel dwarfed by the sheer amount of hostile power that is around you.
Yeah.
You continue progressing up, and it's a minute. You're also kind of surprised that these folks are walking up here instead of flying or just teleporting up. But wizards, man. Uh, you continue heading up, and eventually you find yourself in a large auditorium chamber, essentially. A big round circle with rows and rows of seats around a central kind of pit almost. Um, and you see people coming in, a lot of the younger members, initiates, and the people who just quite frankly seem less fancy than the highest people you can identify. They seem to just be filing into seats. Among the more powerful wizards who seem to be taking some kind of a central position in this room, you catch an older elf man with these deep lines in his face and this vibrant silver hair that's kind of pulled back into a long, smooth ponytail. And you also catch a young human woman with tan skin, this curly black hair that kind of falls from her head, and she's dressed in this kind of real striking all black outfit that doesn't quite match with the robes and the more traditional outfits of the other wizards. Um, do you take a seat and wait for the show to start, or what?
She'll take a seat.
Mm-hmm.
For now, it's probably in her best interest not to try and act out and draw any attention to herself, especially with the amount of people filing in.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, she'll play it cool, see what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
see if she can actually get any information from whatever's about to happen.
Absolutely. You continue to play it cool. You're able to find a seat towards the back, essentially, close to the door, or close to the stairs, at least, I
Yeah.
suppose. And in short order, the place continues to fill up, and who you quickly realize are the archwizards, the archmagisters. There is one for each school, each practice of magic present. You notice that there is no archmagister of necromancy, and you recall the individual you had a conflict with uh, earlier in your career, earlier in this adventure. But they begin to speak. The elf I mentioned earlier begins to speak first. I understand what we propose is radical action. But in these times, I fear radical action is what is needed. As has already been said, we would like to gain majority consent of the entire magisterium before going ahead with our plan. To enchant the city and purge the red presence from the minds of our citizens. Archmagister Zawir, and he indicates the woman, has made her dissent clear, though she assures us that she will abide by the will of the organization. And so now the time has come for us to make our final decision. We, the Archmagisters, stand before you, prepared to answer any questions you might have over this initiative. At the conclusion of this discussion, there are two primary outcomes we expect. Either one, you will vote in favor of the ritual, which will begin immediately on majority consent. Or, if the ritual is not of the majority consent, it will not be used. I remind you, mages, we are fighting a war. Not boots on the ground, not spells in the sky. We're fighting a war of the mind. That needs to be our battlefield. And I tell you, among the entire city of Zenith, no one is more prepared for that battlefield than we are. We have been gifted this power, this magic. Some say by the gods, some say by random chance. It makes no difference. We have this power. And are we not obligated to use it for the good of our people? Yes, I understand that breaching the minds of your fellow citizens, your friends, your family, this is a weighty matter. This is an unfortunate thing to consider. But look outside. Look to the west. The most violent, the least capable of our people are willing a god into existence. I'm not prepared to allow that to happen. And I must stress that I will abide by the majority will of the Magisterium. But equally, I must stress that many more will live if we stop this here and now than if we wait to see what happens. And so I open the floor. Come, ask your questions, make your statements. In 1 hour, we vote. The elf steps back. Do you do anything at that?
I think, given the fact that she's immediately worried about the fact that they're saying that if the majority vote is given towards this initiative, they're using it immediately, which is definitely something that she has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Because she'd rather not have people, the magisterium mind control everyone, for lack of a better term.
No, that's absolutely fair. And that's not an inaccurate representation of the situation.
But she's trying to figure, I think Eris would try to figure out how to almost subtly manipulate people into voting against this. She might either try to spread rumors to the other mages saying, hey, what if this backfires? What are the potential ramifications? What if this ends up affecting us in some magic way or even some political way with, our hold on the city?
Absolutely. How do you do that? Are you whispering to your neighbors or are you standing up and asking questions?
I think for one, she's going to be a little bit bold here. she normally she wouldn't like to draw attention to herself, but given the urgency of the situation, she does feel like she might that efficiency is a little bit more key here than subtlety, at
Sure.
least for keeping her own methodology. So
Hmm.
she'll stand up and ask a question.
Hmm.
What if the potential drawbacks to this proposed method? What if something goes awry during this ritual, this endeavor? Not just magically, but politically. What if the populace aren't entirely affected? Yeah, what if they found out? What could that mean for us?
Go ahead and roll persuasion. This will be the start off as a DC 14.
Okay. Persuasion. All right. Natural 20.
Hell yeah. All right. There are some murmurs in the crowd. The elf begins to speak, but is cut off by Archmagister Zoeir. Initiate Anya has a point. Tensions with Meridian, which you know is another city to the east, are high already. And I can't say I would expect them to be comfortable knowing that we have this particular capability. To be honest, I expect they have some inkling about what we are planning here. The Magisterium is among the most powerful organizations in the world. We attract wizards from everywhere. Why would we expect anyone else to take this laying down? The elf turns to her. I understand your concerns, Magister, but again, given our present situation, well, if nothing else, I suppose I hope we would be forgiven for acting in the face of emergency. Yes, tensions of the Radiant are high, and we have yet to be able to diffuse them, but Meridian is 10, 12 days by horseback. The Red Presence is here among us. As you ask this question, you catch another person, young man, clean shaven, bald, wearing simple blue robes, probably another initiate of some kind. You say that on the majority will of the Magisterium, you will not use this ritual if it is voted against, but you will still have it, no? This will perpetually be hanging over the city, yes? That is true. I did say that. Our research endeavors do not typically involve disposing of knowledge. And I would argue that destruction of the information we have would be a temporary solution. Even if we were to try to get rid of this, it is something we know. The cat is out of the bag, so to speak. People who created this are both alive and of sound memory. What has been created cannot be uncreated. So while I understand your concern, I'm afraid it is not relevant at the moment. There are murmurs of uneasy dissent among the crowd.
I think with Eris's question having started some dissent through the crowd, she'll start talking to her neighbors. So she'll sit back down first and start looking at her neighbors, kind of seeing what they feel about all this.
Absolutely, yeah. You catch a variety of opinions from those around you. Uh, some are, like you, similarly concerned over the nature of this thing, where it puts the magisterium in the balance of power, uh, how it could be used. Um, but you notice that no one seems to be broaching the subject of like, y'all gonna do this again?
She'll take note of that sort of unresolved question that's being kind of lingering in the air. She'll start whispering to some of her other the people next to her. You know, I'm really worried about what they just said. Sure, they could. Sure, they mentioned that they could destroy it, but you know, they always said that what's created can't be uncreated. Who's to say that they don't use this again? What's gonna happen to us if they do? Who's to say that? Who's not to say that someone can, you know, come in and steal the thing?
Go
Like,
ahead. Oh, go ahead.
no, yeah, but
Yeah,
essentially continue along that line. Like,
absolutely.
yeah,
Go ahead and roll persuasion. This will be DC 15.
okay. DC 15. Oh, just 15. Oh, thank God.
That's 15. All right, excellent. You turn and you have this exchange with a this big burly orc woman with like a half shaven head and like one tusk sticking out. Um, and she ponders for a moment. Hmm. I suppose I hadn't considered it. I didn't really well, I don't expect they would use it against us. And, well, my people don't live in the city. There's no use on doing this to them. But my neighbor runs with the divers. I I don't know what would happen if they could see into his mind.
Well, I can tell you what, it will be nothing good.
Hmm. You make a fair point, Initiate.
Fair enough to the point that it could be raised to the archmages.
Perhaps. Tell me, what do you think you should do? I I understand not wanting to do this. It's undesirable, but at the same time, I act. When a bear threatens my people, I kill the bear.
Of course, as one should when the safety of as one should when the safety of their people or things who are important to them are threatened. But if the let's just say if the safety just because that one bear threatened your people, would you go off and kill every single bear?
No, I don't think I would.
Instead of taking the fight to mm, instead of let me rephrase. Instead of forcing our hand upon the entirety of the city, why not attack the root of the problem directly? The ones who are really threatening are the things that we love, shall we say? The red presence.
That would be more direct, in my opinion, maybe preferable. The streets would run red with blood.
Who's to say they already haven't?
Another fair point. Angel blood, if nothing else.
Exactly.
Hmm. Roll me a wisdom saving throw.
Oh, wisdom. Oh boy, this should be interesting. Wisdom save. What we got? What we got? What we got? 18.
18, that'll do it. You do not suffer any ill effects from the vision that follows. As you're speaking to this woman, you feel like you're falling, sinking into yourself. You ever see uh, it's it's like you separate from your eyes from the inside, and you fall, and you see the things you can see fade into nothingness as the vision overtakes you, and you see a brief possibility. You see a possible future that might or might not come to pass. You see a future in which this spell is used once to purge knowledge of itself from the minds of its creators. You return to yourself, pale and shaking. Fortunately, in your heightened state, you didn't accidentally transform into
Transform.
anybody else.
That would have been so bad.
But you see the wizard extending essentially like a water skin to you. Visions get you down?
Apologies. It hasn't happened in quite a while, so I was caught off guard, shall we say.
Mm.
Um, I did see something rather interesting, though. Going
The
back going back to our previous point, we did discuss the possibility of this information being used against us, of course, even if it were to be destroyed. Obviously, the people who created it, they're still alive and of sound memory, as the Archmagister has suggested. But what if that wasn't the case? Or rather, what if we made it so that wasn't the case?
We're killing wizards now?
No, 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 no. Not we're not killing them. That of course that would be besides the point and wholly against this whole thing. No innocent blood should need to spill. No more innocent blood need to be spilled over this entire matter. Fortunately, there is a way for there's a certain spell that we have for tampering with minds, shall we say? Not unlike the one we are currently discussing.
That's a bold suggestion.
No less bold than tampering with the minds of every citizen in Zenith.
I understand your point. I don't know if you'd be able to get anyone to go along with it, but
Maybe I might not, but how fancily like are the robes of my neighbor, of this orc woman? Are they
uh,
more fancy compared to mine, or
yeah, I
still
mean,
roughly around initiate level?
this person referred to you specifically as initiate, so you would guess that they are higher up. This is probably someone who's like, uh, their title is Magister. This is someone who's
Mm-hmm.
essentially of the broad swath of middling wizards between sort of first level spell, second level spell casting initiates, and then the serious folks in the center of the room who are
Right.
changing reality on the daily.
Of course, yeah. I think Eris is going to try to convince this woman to propose this plan in her stead, because obviously she has a point. No one's going to listen to an initiate. Would but someone of a higher rank, like, say, a magister, might have a bit more sway when proposing an idea like this.
All right. She stops, pauses to consider as the dialogue continues to go along. Right now, the broader discussion seems to be down a tangent of exactly, well, what does this thing exactly do?
Mm-hmm.
What exactly do we get to learn? What exactly can we do to people?
Right.
The specifics seem to be fascinating the crowd at the moment. Um, but at this point, the woman you make a fair point. And you might draw the ire of the Archmagisters, but someone's got to think creatively here. And so she stands up. Magisters, have we considered that the spell could, in theory, be turned against itself? What I mean to not necessarily propose, but inquire is this is magic of an untold caliber and of unprecedented applications. It will draw attention to us. And costly though the alternatives may be, come, we must admit there are alternatives to permanent access to the minds of our neighbors whenever we decide the situation is dire enough. Because come, let us not forget that we are the only ones here, the divers, the bakers, the ironworkers, the dock hands, the children, the church. Well, they're all down below, and here we are. I fear our city running red with blood as well as you do. But I don't know if this is the right way to go about it. And so I suppose I ask if we would consider, maybe for once, maybe for the first time in the history of this organization, maybe there are some things better left unknown. Esteemed Magisters, I trust you. But does the city? If they do, will they continue to after this? Because I tell you, if we do this, I don't know that I will trust you anymore. And maybe that means nothing. But maybe it shouldn't. She sits back down. This is an interesting line of inquiry. The idea that there is some knowledge best left unknown is hostile to the purpose of this place. It's not a proposition that is made lightly. There's a great deal of murmuring between the other wizards. Go ahead and roll me a perception check real quick, or maybe insight if you're better at that. Whatever works.
Probably do perception. I think that's probably my better stat.
Sure, this would be like DC 12 for perception.
DC 12. Okay, it's a 14.
14. You catch an almost knowing smile from Archmagister Zawir, the Archmagister of Enchantment. She looks at the orc woman who just made this suggestion. This woman who you've come to know. Her name is Naka, Naka. She just looks almost approvingly. She says nothing. Is there anything else you'd like to do?
Can I try to gauge the feelings of the room, how they're sort of leaning in terms of voting?
Sure. I'll say that you would have, if you were trying to gauge that, you would have to wait until pretty close to the vote itself.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, all right, absolutely. Then I would say maybe you're on the clock. The elf who's kind of leading this discussion has said this is a discussion that's going to take place over the course of an hour. And you also get the sense that this has been this conversation has been bandied about a little bit in the inner circles, right? This is not an idea that seems to be novel to anybody,
right?
That said, as the hour ticks by and you begin to come to a wrap on this discussion, a pit begins to grow in your stomach as the increasingly impassioned pleas of the dissenters become drowned out by short, small, very widely shared voices of consent begin to dominate the discussion.
Oh no. With these voices of consent, how are they behaving? Like, aside from, are they all kind of acting rather similarly to each other, as if an idea has been planted in their heads regarding the vote?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so if you're trying to detect magical manipulation, that will be Arcana. If you're trying to determine more psychological states, that would be Insight.
Insight, okay. Let's do Insight because I have a 0 for Arcana.
All right, hell yeah!
But it's still a good idea regardless.
Yeah, this will be DC 10.
DC 10, that gets me to a 12.
All right, that'll do it. The voices of consent are many and varied. But as they continue to mount, you notice one thing above all unites them. Fear. Fear of open conflict. Fear of the Red Presence. Fear of what will we do if we don't have access to this? Because this exists. Some motherfucker can make a spell that changes the mind of a whole city. And you got there first. Who's to say someone won't get there next?
Kind of after studying this amount of, kind of gauging like, okay, if this is why they're chanting consent for this, Eris sort of feels like they're sort of running around the situation almost. Which, sort of given the magisterium, doesn't really surprise her.
Yeah.
It feels a lot like they're just running from the problem, which is kind of a feeling that she has had about the magisterium before. even during her service days with them, like
Yep.
being contracted out for jobs that they could have done themselves, but they pawned off to someone else like Eris instead. It's just a way to pawn off responsibility and avoid looking at the problem almost.
Yep.
And in response, almost beside herself, this is normally something she wouldn't really do. She's gonna stand up again, but this time sort of almost shout at the Magisters, you're just running from the problem. Like, and she's gonna direct us at the Archmagisters, but it's sort of meant for everyone.
Archmagister Zawier gives you a look. Running from the problem? Explain.
Eris is gonna sort of feign looking down and like, I'm sorry for speaking out of turn like that. What the others who are voting towards consent for this ritual, they do have a point. If this spell existed, if someone created a spell, who's to say that they won't create it again? But I think we need to make it so that this sort of spell can't be created. Like Naka said, like Magister Naka said, this type of knowledge is something that should remain unknown. For the benefits are far outweighed by the potential harm and consequences this could cause. Not just towards the citizens of Zenith, but what if someone uses this spell against us? I know this might be out of line for someone in my status to say, or my rank, but what if there was I almost don't want to say it for how brazen it is, but what if we had a ban on this type of inquiry of magic? Mental manipulation is something. It seems almost fundamentally counter to the rules of the world. All beings should be able to make up their own minds, of their own will. No one should be able to force any ideas they may have upon others. Sure, people may attempt to do that through words, obviously, or do so through power in the kingship sense, obviously. That's how dictators are. But through magic? It just doesn't seem, well, to borrow a phrase from Magister Naka, it just doesn't seem right.
I understand your perspective, Initiate, but that is beyond the bounds, beyond the scope of this conversation.
Is it truly, though?
Yes. We are here to solve a real problem in the world today. If you want to make a push for which practices of magic can or cannot be studied, that is best left a long-term project when we do not have this red presence at our throats.
Then I ask this. Surely there were not other alternatives considered to this plan of action. And if there were, I would like to hear them. I believe that is our right.
It is. We have considered open conflict. It's costly. Personally, I think it might be the most effective thing we can do. Or maybe the most desirable out of our present circumstances, but I bend to the will of the whole. We can also, of course, just watch things happen. Keep everyone inside. Shore up our defenses. Let those in the city care for themselves, and then when everything settles down, reemerge. There's been talk of moving the tower. It can be done. It would be rather difficult, and I don't think any other city really has the infrastructure to keep our organization afloat. And of course, there's the idea of unifying with the church and the divers to deal with this one problem as a unified front. Though I don't necessarily believe that's likely. In short, those are the other options we have discussed. The clock is ticking.
Eris will just sort of shake her head and just sort of, especially in response to the sort of just, let's just hide ourselves away and reemerge option, because that alone sort of feels like the whole, literally the running from the problem exemplified, and that is just. But she is a little bit intrigued that that open conflict is a desirable to them. I mean, makes sense. They kind of have been just sitting on their asses, just sort of watching. Why not let them sort of flex on the red presence? Like, hey, this is our city. Get out. But she's also intrigued by the fact that there's at least someone or some people who have considered the idea of an alliance between the Magisterium and the other guilds.
Mm-hmm.
And those thoughts sort of start spinning a few wheels in her heads as to how she could possibly spin this. And maybe how she could galvanize them into some form of action.
Is there anything else you'd like to do before the final vote is cast?
I think she'd like to at least make it known to the others that don't just rely solely on this ritual. At least consider the other alternatives. Because her mission right now is not to get them to, so at least stop this mind control ritual from happening. Mm-hmm. The rest she can figure out after the vote, but at least get them to stop voting for this thing. So she'll try to at least implore for the alternatives to be considered before just blindly enacting this plan.
Go ahead and roll insight.
15 on the roll.
15, that'll do it. As you begin to consider alternatives and spin your mind, spin the wheels, hoping to find some kind of last-ditch avenue of approach, you realize that there's one thing that hasn't been tried, at least in the context of this discussion. There's a lot of fear in the air. Some of it is spoken, some of it is not, but what none of it is addressed. No one is looking at anyone else and telling them not to be afraid.
Interesting. I think Eris would try to capitalize on that and at least try to, obviously her disguise is an initiate, so it may not be the best thing, but coming from someone of her disguise's rank, but she could also spin it off as like, hey, I'm new. This might just be naivety talking, but I also see it as just optimism.
Mhm.
So she'll try to spin sort of at least allay that, hey, I get it. It's a scary thing that we're facing. Quite possibly the end of everything that could be. Our status, our power, the city itself, the world even as we know it. But and it's okay to be afraid. But just all I'm asking is that you don't give in to that fear. Maybe hold out hope for something or take charge and try to shape it through hope. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Just please, just don't be afraid of the future, of what could be a good future. On the blind and don't give into the fear that of a small percentage of some bad future happening. You have to. I'm sorry. I'm just very. Just please. And this is almost like a. It's almost half character acting, half Eris actually speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something about this both vulnerability and willingness to look at the actual currents of what's happening and speak to them that seems to rouse something. Shortly after you sit down, Naka stands up. If you will not listen to the patient wisdom of young initiate Anya, then you will perhaps listen to this. Be bold, damn you! Who are you? Are you clerics? Do you get your magic from the piddly currents of your heart? Or do you get your magic from a mind of iron and a will of steel? We are wizards! I've said my piece. She sits down.
Eris, as Anya is just kind of giving like a very big smile, just like, you're a very good public speaker.
I get better when I'm angry.
I can tell.
Roll me a percentile die with advantage.
Ooh, percentile die. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's see what we can do here. Bust these babies out. Okay. 99.
99. All right. That'll do it. Somehow, in an almost baffling turn of events, the shift of the conversation in the last remaining 5 minutes sways heavily in your direction. You're not sure whether or not you've genuinely touched the hearts and minds of your fellow wizards, or if nobody wants to look like a little bitch. But slowly but surely, people begin to find other options desirable. By the end of the hour, when the vote is finally cast, it's almost as if you said the right thing at precisely the right time. And you don't know if this is an artifact of here, now, this, or whether or not you've genuinely changed people's perspectives for the long haul. Can't tell. But you know, at the end of the day, the votes are tallied, and the support in your favor, or at least the support in favor of non-consent for casting this ritual, is overwhelming. The elf who has been leading this discussion thus far seems irritated. But in this context, you almost see through that. You see the fear bubbling underneath. But he doesn't stop anything. As you have at least narrowly averted disaster for the brief moment. And the room begins emptying out with a almost hopeful tenor to the air. Oh. The Archmagister of Enchantment, Mishra Zawir, kind of nods at you as if to invite you to speak directly one-on-one.
She'll make her way over.
Come, young changeling, let's talk.
And she'll immediately raise her eyebrows at that. I'm sorry, pardon?
You know, I don't study enchantment out of professional curiosity, believe it or not. This is said as you're walking towards what you can assume to be her office.
Mm.
Since I was a child, I've been able to hear the thoughts of others. I don't need to see you transform to know there's somebody else in there. I can't say I approve of you infiltrating our discussion, but at the same time, I'm grateful for your efforts. Now come, let's make sure they last.
By all means, and she'll. I think after sort of being found out, she's sort of having like this sort of hunch posture to sort of keep an identity. But when she sort of gets exposed, she sort of rolls her shoulders back and sort of gets back into that confident, cocky Eris posture almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, let's.
Mishra Zawir leads you into a large spacious office, and there's books everywhere, various pieces of magical equipment, charts to track the movements of the stars, all this kind of miscellaneous shit that you'd expect wizards to collect, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the middle of the desk is an ornate, like golden claw type stand holding a blood red crystal orb, inside of which roils this gaseous liquid. It's unclear. I'm not sure whose idea it was, yours or Naka's, but you seem to have stumbled onto my desired outcome nonetheless. It's one thing to hear another's thoughts. I cannot turn this off, as it were. I'm stuck. Seeing through masks, seeing through disguises, that will never change. And until it does, I will find out some way to make this worthwhile for everybody whose secrets I am bound to keep. So no, I will not let you take my job. But I could use your help.
Oh. With what exactly?
Put your hand on the orb. We are going to cast this ritual. It will require the two of us. What I will be doing is removing key pieces of information that leave this inquiry several years down the road, should we ever come to it at all. Unfortunately, I cannot purge it from my own mind as the only person who can truly cast this spell. So you'll just have to trust me.
I guess I will.
But what I need from you is, while this is happening, I need you to leave something in the absence. I am going to be taking information, taking knowledge. But I think you can help me leave something in its place. I feel something in you. Courage, confidence. It's partially ignorant, but not completely so. I want you to channel that. This is manipulative, and based on your argument, perhaps this is morally fraught. But I'm willing to hold those sins, if you are.
Well, lucky for you, manipulation is just something I happen to be quite good at.
As I suspected.
Any sins I had, any misgivings I had about this, I'll shoulder them. I always do.
We're alike in that regard. Now come. Let's do this.
Let's.
You and Mishra Zawir put each one hand on the crystal orb, and you are sucked out of yourself. Almost similarly to a vision. But not quite. You're still grounded in your internality. When you have visions, you fully adopt the experiences of another. You're almost overwhelmed by them. There are some cases, some poor unfortunate souls continually have visions of one specific other person, and they become that other person in horrifying, really just unfortunate ways. This is not like. There's still you. And so as you put your hands on the orb, you find yourself, a piece of you, in everyone. And with a practiced, gentle hand, Archmagister Zawir begins pluck, pluck, pulling strands of information from various people around the city. It's nonsense to you. How to grind a specific crystal. The look of fear in the eyes of your fellow citizens. Equations, star charts, magical words from dead languages. All of these things, all of these little bits, just extracted. What are you leaving in their place?
I think in their place, Eris is going to sort of think back to what Magister Zawir said. That sort of courage and charisma that she mentioned. It's funny because Eris never really thought of herself as courageous. Never really once at all. She's always been doing what felt good to her, what helped her survive, live, thrive even in Zenith. But she does remember speaking out to the assembled mages. And that almost elicited a rather strange feeling in her. Well, not exactly strange. It's just one that she hasn't really cultivated in a long while. But nonetheless, it was a good feeling to have. So she'll let that feeling overcome her, and that courage, that sort of hope for the future, almost. She'll slowly put pieces of that in the little voids where Mishra Zawir had plucked out each bit of information.
Absolutely. It's an odd experience. You feel yourself drifting through time and space, finding absences and filling them with the quiet courage of a survivor. And as you do, as you drift from mind to mind, space to space, soul to soul, it's an odd feeling. But you're struck by the fact that in some ways, goodness does go with you. And that is where we'll end tonight's session. Hell yeah, good shit.
That was really good. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's all we got. Thanks for tuning into this special fun episode 101 where we got to follow the adventures of Eris. As far as I'm aware, this is airing after the end of the Zenith campaign proper. And so whether you've just tuned in for this episode or whether you're a follower of the entire series, we're grateful for the time you spent with us. And we hope that goodness goes with you as well. Have a good night.